All right, so in my mind, I'm going to try to just read through this, but then go through this sort of like outline of what I really want to get into. But since it's so much, obviously for like 2 years almost, I've been accumulating a lot of just different texts, but also like certain highlights from them and realizations of like an order, I guess, or a pattern. I had to backtrack a lot of the way because when you go so far into something, you almost forget in a sense, or like not forget, but you have to really take notes. But then at the same time, there's this weird reflecting process of second guessing in a sense, and you kind of like, I don't know, it continues in its own way of being the research process without, I don't know. So you have to like, or I've had to just try to guide myself through all of this. But so I'm just really going to start with this, which was the original post itself that I haven't even gotten to, which I find hilarious. Because I've looked back at it a lot, and in a sense, what I think I kind of there's like a resonance with what I was tapping into when I wrote it, with different texts, but I guess ideas and realizations at the time of synthesizing what I had at this like all up till then. But then recently, so much has also crystallized, and like it's gotten more complex, but also simple. So, Forging the Sword from Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. As an intro for the channel that has now already been rendered for the most part defunct for the time being, I spoke my mind about some various things which I felt needed to be said, particularly for those who may come across my material for the first time. It is difficult not to be rather unenthused about how, in a time when information has never been more easily obtainable, and yet it is so taken for granted. All the while, there is this constant boasting of advancement and modernization. Although, why does it seem people are genuinely becoming more dumbed down, to put it frankly? The whole point, however, is that in a dog eat dog world where the strongest are said to survive, then the meek and weak who do not avail themselves to knowledge and power made readily available will inevitably perish by their own doing or lack thereof, with no one else to blame. By our words behind us, we create the path before us, and with the sword we forge in life, may we free our soul in death. And I wonder, actually, is that the verse that I had brought up? No, I think it was. For my, well, no, it's something I actually thought of this morning, which is like, my people perish for lack of knowledge. But, where is that? Hold on. I already knew this is going to be complicated with so many things up. But, so, free our soul in death. That's interesting with what, again, every little part of this post I didn't really consider. It's just really when I say like the feeling or resonance I felt is like this. I can only describe as the word Camelot, even though just because again with the ancient secret in search of the Holy Grail in the Grail mythos, that seems to be like like a mandala of sorts that led to a certain point, like to a tower moment in a sense, and then had to restart, or still needs further a furthering of the generation stage, so to speak. Uh, which again, like this post being 81, I didn't even really give, again, none of these particular posts that I wrote, I didn't give any thought to the number. I didn't know when I would stop and what it would be. But 99, or I mean 81 being 9 times 9. I was looking like at these nines, but 99 itself though also being like the 0 through 99, 100 grid. This, I mean, um, with the symmetry, the butterfly, this whole patterning of numbers, which also again being 81 is like the whole prime numbers. Like if you tabulate them, essentially, consider the like enumerate the prime numbers. Uh, I have these kind of put in like a grid 1 through 9, but and they actually go into the next page. But then I made this little booklet of the gematria correspondences, Greek, Hebrew, and then also the, like English or Hebrew applied to English essentially, but then also even all these newly acquired Sanskrit as well as other um, whatever languages phonetically transliterated that may have came up, but Sanskrit in particular. 81 is like the 81st prime number is 419, which is Teth, a serpent, but then 409 is the prime number of 80, which is the word serpent. And this little interrelation there has kind of tied everything together from, uh, again, just this obvious numerical like patterning, at least that I've only been looking at and trying to find, or whatever you want to say. I'm looking for it so I see it, but it's not necessarily that. It's like I've just created a gematria database, looked at all this different data, acquired new sets that haven't kind of been like, I say like sets, but like data sets, um, vocabularies, entire like linguistic or lexicons or whatever. Um, like the Tantra Badana, for example, I made into this, like translated this book of my own. Like it's that you can't really see anything. There's just a cover with no title that I painted it, the paper, and then I had this blank book that I guess the thing's upside down. But like I wanted to really get an intimate knowledge of all the Sanskrit, and so this A to it's not really A to Z, but their their alphabet, and I've spent like almost 2 years, not just writing in this, but writing a lot. Like I basically translated this Italian Raniero Ginoli's Tantra Loca because you can actually type Italian on a keyboard with English letters. And so at work, I did that slowly over time, and that took about a year. And what was just like this little thing I carried around and filled, like until I did every chapter, I typed into Google Translate, copied and pasted the English, kind of read it and edited it, but then wrote out also simultaneously the result. And that eventually doubled in size and became this big ol' contraption. But really, in total, it's this right here. And yet, at the same time, Mark Dixkowski or whatever, it's hard to not whatever. I really respect him, but Mark Dixkowski, who wrote so many other books like The Doctrine of Vibration, the Canon of Shaivagama and Kubjika Tantras, the Mandana Bhairava Tantram. It's essentially like I'm just rattling off titles, but eventually I'll show like there's a sort of pattern I want to explain as far as how to best get into that sort of knowledge, which started out for me as just trying to understand the Chakra Samvara Tantra, which was really appealing. Again, with the Guya Samaja Tantra, which I read about from Alex Wayman that I mentioned in the last post, the whole Mahanarayana Tantra, which was 80 verses, like all of that sort of weird synchronicity that for me was very, um, like it drew me in. It's helped to memorize everything, It's like continued on, but I couldn't keep up with it. It's been a flood, but I've kept up with trying to like map it out. And so I have this like giant list of. I've tried to limit it to just front and back of one paper, so like but four, like folded in half, so 4 pages, and so that's why it's hard to explain this all, but it's not hard, but it's just I don't want to forget anything, and I want to try to show how the serpent can kind of like weave a way through. I say the serpent, but the Kundalini or the um, Chakra Narayana, Ida Pingala, and create this central channel in a sense to bring through this wisdom. And the effort or like the goal, the whole point of it all, I can only describe best by like really I need to read this sort of like little guide or manual to it, how this all transpired. Uh, so it's like one thing after another. But basically, from as far back as at least post 62, when I began more deeply researching the subjects of Madhyamaka, Dzogchen, and Sanskrit itself, finding the books of Alex Wayman, Herbert Gunther, and Edward Kahns, and certain sutras and tantras, especially the Ushnisha Vijaya Dharani Sutra and the Sarva Durgati Parisodhana Tantra, Elimination of All Evil Destinies, and the Treasury of Knowledge of Jamgon Kongtrul, transcribed by, and I also transcribed the Tantra Badana, which I mentioned. That's Tantric Lexicon, but really a Sanskrit. It's not a whole dictionary, it's kind of like just the main terms that would be used in all these major texts that I kind of like the foundational texts that the Chakra Samvara introduction by David, I think Gray, says like Kashmir Shaivism, Trika Shaivism. Uh, all these texts mostly are commented on and like reprinted not recently, but in the last 20 to 30 to 40 years. And I mean, there's new reprints even by certain companies. But when he himself published them was like the 80s. But Jaideva Singh, and it's like the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, the Shiva Sutras, Pratyabhijna Hridayam, Ishvara Pratyabhijna Karika of Upaladeva. And there's a certain order that I personally read them in, and they'll come up kind of. I'm going to try to navigate through all of this in a sort of whatever way I personally found it. But so that whole like starting that Sanskrit like writing book really helped because I wanted to try to do what I did whenever I taught myself the Hebrew alphabet, which was find all these associations, kind of like that childhood way of like associating letters in the alphabet with like an image itself, which to my knowledge at the time, like there wasn't, or at least for I didn't know where to find any references to like a Cabala of Sanskrit, or like since in the Hebrew you have the tarot and certain attributions of what the letters mean. So there's like instant images in a sense or imagery. But I ended up finding though that in the Agni Purana, chapter 348, every letter is given a sort of symbol in a sense. But beyond that, there is in the Tantra Loka, which is mostly built on the Malini Vijaya Tara Tantra, a short but very deep and profound text about the alphabet, and Malini being like the mala or necklace, but of the alphabet, and the powers of Shakti essentially, and Shiva. Which Shiva and Shakti essentially create the whole Chakra Samvara Mandala, which is translated variously, and each one is kind of an insight into how complex it is. Binding of the wheels, binding of the wheel, the Chakra. Samvara, though, there's like in the concealed essence of the Hevajra Tantra, it talks about um, basically, I actually have that pulled up, page 15, which it's just a coincidence, I understand, but 15 I'll talk about because, and then what this says, which is in the center of creation, a 64 petal lotus, in the center of essential nature, an 8 petal lotus, in the center of enjoyment, a 16 petal lotus, in the center of great bliss, a 32 petal lotus, which I had calculated 64 plus 8 plus 16 plus 32 is 120, which is 1 through 15. But not that that matters so much as the fact now I've been seeing 120 everywhere since rethinking the whole fact that it's 120 years since the Eon of Horus after the whole eclipse on April 8th, which, was like the dual eclipse moon. There's a certain name for it astrologically, but which happened on my birthday in 2017. Like they paralleled and made an X. Um, and that whole thing has slowly clicked into being like symbolic, like in many different ways. I'm going to try to just explain. Not that I think anything necessarily of it, other than like it helps me hold and maintain, like as a Durrani or whatever, like a memory, what is it, mnemonic device. But the 5 elements essentially is what I think of with 15, but yet Kenneth Grant really goes into 15. Obviously, the goddess 15, uh, the Kalas, but 1 through 5 being 15, 1 through 15 being 120. Hold on. So, but I know I just started in the middle with that, but really there's the introduction, and it says, "Thus have I heard, at one time Bhagavan dwelt in the wombs of the Vajra lady, which are the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas." And this body, speech, and mind concept, it's very important that you have to keep it in body, speech, and mind throughout this. But I would read all this, but I want to try to work my way back to that, because really I actually wanted to work my way to that. So now I have to try to work back. I don't want to be all back and forth too much, but the more I learn with each passing day, the more I come. So I wanted to read this, but I was in the middle of this. What should I do? I'll just do this, and then I'm going to come back to this. But the more I learn with each passing day, the more I come to feel like I'm merely remembering rather than actually learning for the first time. So yeah, also why I kind of took some time off from making any videos was because I really wanted to take the time to learn all this and embrace it, like really grok it, really like let it sink in and kind of let Sanskrit speak to me so I could understand the inner, the Devani or the Sphota, the sort of dynamic behind it, the kick, the sort of once you get certain things like imprinted memorially, uh, like I did with Hebrew, I hit like a glass ceiling or a brick wall. I can now this has like recharged a lot and it's given me too much. Really, I had to process and organize, but so I just had to stop and say that. That's why I'm like going back and forth because it's weird. There's like a ladder I have to follow. Um, As I have said, as far back as when I first read Liber AL when 17 years old and having an intense deja vu experience where I almost knew that, or what, the next verse would say, and slowly I am coming to find that certain actions, symbols, and ideas I had as a child parallel, sometimes perfectly, with the occurrences and discoveries I'm coming across now. And real quick, translating the Tantra Loka, like chapter by chapter, day by day, as I did, it did something to help really bring back a lot of memories, like important things that got clouded and shrouded and just things in the way of. And it was just weird. It's like almost like when you push on your eyes is the only thing I can kind of give an analogy like, and you like can see and like focus in, and it takes you to this like stars. Not that that necessarily matters or even expresses the point I wanted to say, other than that there's this clearing. Whoa. I mean, it's not whoa, but it kind of creeped me out. Okay, so I get too in this like time tunnel. Shit happens, and I just go with it. But anyway, so yeah, so things, ideas I had as a child parallel sometimes perfectly with occurrences and discoveries I'm coming across now. So yeah, just things I naturally thought, like I've found validation for, and so I wasn't like crazy and just too imaginative. There's actually like a basis for it's like an instinct or something. Another example is how I knew the number 9 was somehow a key to everything long before I knew anything about numerology from reading about it, and took my vow to discover for myself what it meant, at least to me, on September 9th, 2009. And so I mentioned this date, but there is like a whole page of dates I wanted to mention, or at least use as a guideline also to not forget. And while I could like I need it, it's not like I need it, but I want it, and I got so many papers, but it's the fact that maybe it's right here. Right when I put one date, like I was like, oh wait, there's definitely a big trail. Um, so like September 9th, 2009 was when I really was like, okay, I've got to, I don't want to say devote myself, but commit to understanding Crowley's system, because I knew it like it was a key, but he had like fallen short just simply. But a lot of people think it's because of his personal, like his personality and his character, and people are so caught up in the like one sentence about with the whole sacrifice thing, which he's actually quoting just the doctrine of sacrifice, essentially, not even necessarily condoning it. He's just talking about with correspondences and power levels, essentially. If like it's, I'm not even condoning it myself by talking about it, but yet that's like you're bridging that line. Um, Teetering on the ridge. But June 6th, 2006 was like also when I, in a sense, it was like a lesser initiation because it was the first concert I went to, and it was him in Mesa, Arizona. And 6 I was already like, I just knew there was something to that. And it wasn't just the stupid, like, spray painted on a wall and piss people off. Like, I don't know. I knew there was something like deeper to it. And it was like shadowing itself or foreshadowing. I don't know. But that was 18 years ago, I noticed this year. And that was a sort of holiday. For me, also, the April 2nd, 2011, when I got the this obsidian egg that really caused some weird synchronicities, especially because I'd got outside the circles of time that week and read up to like that chapter Ma Ion, which like I read even chapter 8 where he mentions this recurring egg, and the whole experience of reading that was very surreal. And then I was like, okay, I need to get the rest of his books. But so that was 13 years ago, 13 and 18. It makes 666 in the Revelation. Never mind. Um, I'm not trying to make all these connections like, oh, it means anything, but it's again, just to me, this is the sort of web or pattern that this past year, like, I've really noticed, and I just really want to mention. I'm trying to breeze through all this because there's so much, but each one of these dates are kind of significant to me. April 8th, also, again, the eclipse that people like freaked out about, which for the first one, or I mean, the other one, there's eclipses a lot. I mean, not a lot, but there's eclipses. And the other one, though, in 2017, no one like really even cared about, which I found funny because that was my birthday. But then this one, and then no one even realized anything about Crowley. Like no one's talked about it. as far as I know. Like, I mean, they probably have. I don't read Facebook and all that stupid shit, but um, what else? June 9th, 2012, when I started the blog, was 12 years ago. So this connection between 12 and 13, uh, 12 obviously like a cycle, and then 13 like a rebirth, death, rebirth. Um, Also this year there was some weird stuff like that really happened, like some weird shit at work after then, like, okay, before I even gotten this new job that I've had, and some weird shit happened at a certain time. It was like on March 21st. It was like 3, 2, 1, uh, and then for like 2 weeks I didn't know what was going to happen, just because like some people really wanted to try to like start shit, and like I wasn't going to take it. Uh, and I really wanted, like, me trying to diffuse it made it worse. But it was like weird because I hadn't had any like altercations and interactions so bad since some car tried to like create a stop and go, or like a swoop and squat car accident, and they're literally like associated with a string of uh, chiropractor fraud as well as like car accident fraud throughout the metroplex. But and like I have like all the documentation on that. It's just, aside from that, uh, even with all the COVID like craziness, the only thing was this guy at work, and like, but through that 2 weeks, like I had this sort of uh, like I ended up learning about the hilaria of like Addis, and felt like I went through that. Not literally, obviously, certainly not even the castration part, especially. But I mean, in a sense, I realized like, holy shit, just being like de, I don't want to say thrones because I wasn't on throne, but something taken out from under you, and you looking like the bad guy, and like anything you, like, I don't know, it's like everything that was turned on me, and if I wasn't in the precise positioning, things would have been way worse, and like that's what's funny. Um, what else? Oh yeah, and I was like something. I was like taking baths up like just throughout March and then into April, and not just baths, but like I was putting certain herbs in there, blessed thistle, five finger, and what was the wormwood. And then I like it occurred to me, I was like, I'm basically making all. I mean, I didn't have fennel and what is it, anise or anise, and but I was like, I'm basically making absinthe, and I'm giving myself absinthe baths. But I, not literally, but then it made me want to try some absinthe because I hadn't since 2013 on my birthday. Uh, Gave myself a huge headache because I didn't know how, like, I knew how to drink it, but I didn't realize you can't really drink more than 2 glasses without having bad reactions, or like headaches the next day and stuff. So I didn't even want to drink it again, but I've gotten a bunch of different absinthes, like all the ones you can get at different stores, just to try. And but one of all of them, like I happened to get this St. George one, which has a monkey beating a skull on it. Uh, one week, I think the weekend of like, it wasn't the eclipse, but it was like 2 weeks later. Um, and then found out that it was St. George's like holiday or whatever on April 23rd when I actually opened it, and it was, I swear, like the weekend just before, or it was just, I can't, I just know April 23rd was St. George's holiday, and I don't want to say something possessed me to go and get that, but like I'd have to show you all the different absinthes I've gotten, and for that to have randomly occurred, even if I was like making all this up, that's what it's also, I thought of today. I was like, if I made all this shit up, all these connections that for me are just written down and yet to try to talk about, or it's going to be, harder to see. What I'm even trying to say, like, even if I've made it up, there's something to be said for the fact that it's all like, I don't know, like that's to me what is perplexing, is like I didn't make it up. I just, it's hard to say. Like the skeptic in me sees again, like when you have all this stuff, is it just, oh, you looking for signs, and because you made these certain dates in your own mind significant, this sort of I'm not even saying that the years between them are significant. It's just more like this understanding of time, especially the distances between times. uh, there's something like going on in this, and it's just not going on weirdly in some supernatural way. It's just the generative forces. Again, having read the Samkhya Karika, I'm looking at this in terms of tattvas, and especially with the added knowledge now of like Trika Shaivism or Kashmir Shaivism, which says that the five tattvas or five elements are like activated and charged and really like given further like evolution is brought about through the sixth element, which is like chitta essentially, or just the mind, or not really just the mind, but the complicated like processes that it would take to sort of, to me, uh, I instantly coming up to my mind is the Paratrishika Vivarana or Vivarana by Abhinavagupta. Like I had actually got that because it looked pretty, and yet I was like, I opened it. I'm like, oh, they say this is. I say they say, but if you read about it, they say it's like very complex, and it's kind of a summary or concentration of the Tantra Loka, and it's 37 verses, while the Tantra Loka is 37 chapters. But it happens to be so concentrated that, like, again, to get it, you'd have to have really read the Tantra Loka. And there's an initiation sort of. I mean, the whole Tantra Loka is about initiation, but it's even meant to. There's a mentioning about it, how it's, or within it, about how it's kind of written forward and backward, which that's kind of what Tantra Loka really means. I mean, they say it's the elucidation of Tantra or the light on Tantra, but it's like the warping, which is what Tantra could also mean, of the Loka, which is the like world, the world warp 3. But anyway, so I'm talking about these dates, but this whole Saint George, again, Saint Georgius, it sits at 6, and he kind of represents Michael, like, which at the time, like, there's a lot to this whole dragon concept, and the fact that obviously Michael he's like steps on Satan or whatever, and yet there's this doctrine in a sense of, I don't want to say doctrine, but there's a parallel between the doctrine of resurrection and the whole Manjushri Yamantaka conquering of death parallel that I see. And again, I don't want to like conflate too much these different traditions because they're so distinct and like deep in and of themselves, and yet there's definitely like some obvious like doors open, like that open between the two, and or not the two, but like the many. And so really I need to get back to all this stuff, but just in the last few days, actually, what I felt like I could more easily talk about all this, and I was realizing like the new moon was April, I mean not April, August 4th, but yet April 8th, reflecting, was when the eclipse was, which was also new moon. But this whole study of the moon, and that's really what comes down to these time cycles. What's the most significant aspect of them, and that ties in with this book Tantra Vidya, and the whole idea of like each planet and its time cycles are like very connected to the whole concept of the Padma Dalas, and again the Sanskrit letters and the secret behind that, which is the Malini Vijayo Tara Tantra. But anyway, so this 2009 date and just all these dates are kind of significant to me because this whole 9 times 9, 81, like when you take 666, so again, Chakra Samvara Mandala and the circle, excuse me, sits times sits being 36 and 1 through 36 being sits at 6, that represents the sort of like earth plane in a sense. Obviously, the cube, the um, Hafren, and like the all these carnal nature, sin, all the things that people would want to like get stuck in a sense, but yet to me like the 777, 888, 999, and especially 999. Why I even chose? It's not like I chose that date. It's like that date chose me. Um, I but because my will, if you want to call it that, like something in me knew to follow this like path and try to like riddle it out. The whole and like the cryptogram in AL is really just like a symbolic to me. Like I've found so many things in that and with it. It's almost like if you run things through it, it does things. But this 888 to me is what like I was like trying to also understand, like despite wanting to understand the Chakra Samvara Tantra and really what else was I really like the oh and okay so I wrote and completed the Tantra Loka, but it took me weeks um, to really like want to even think about it. So I wrote all these other sort of like Dharanis because there's this website now 8400 like the word like I don't remember what it's called. It has something to do with the 8400 and it has all these things they're slowly translating. And so I wanted to get to the Manjushri Mula Kalpa, and I'm glad that they have that already translated because technically, again, the Tantra Loka. See, I'd cut myself off, but Mark Dikowski translated the Tantra Loka for like he's been doing it for a lot longer, and he has Jayaratha's commentary also, but he's gonna have it in all these different volumes, and it's gonna be hard to get. And I'm like, I just wanted it. Something told me to translate it myself, so I did, and it was a good like practice. But at the same time, simultaneously, other information was like kind of seeping in, and it helped to read the again those Jayadeva or Jayadeva Singh books. Also, there was a point where I like went to go to my grandma's funeral, and in that time, since I didn't want to focus or like I didn't want to get sidetracked, I took a break from Tantra Loka, but I was bored at also like doing certain things like in a car and stuff and coming back. So I did the Paramartha Sara by Abhinavagupta, which is like a much more simple, like whereas the Paratrishika Vivarana is very more complex. The Paramartha Sara, which my grandma's name is Martha, so I was like, okay, I better just do that because something told me to, and I was like almost completed with it by the time I actually went to the funeral, and it was like the wisdom contained in that coincided with the entire feelings I was like going through there, and it helped with everything. And I actually felt super like I felt like she was at peace because of the ability for me to kind of process what I did and the way with like the I don't know, just the knowledge. And my other grandma had passed away like in 2019 on April 26th, Shakespeare's birthday, which at the time I was studying Francis Bacon and all that. And like, it's just crazy to me. Like, it's uh, like they're guiding me. It's not them though, but it's like something and it's all peaceful, like Ananda. But anyway, so I keep cutting myself off, but I'm trying to like fill in the gaps. But maybe if you have ADHD, uh, this will make sense. But if not, then I recommend it. No, I'm just kidding. Um, about 3 years later, I came to discover that the Cabala of Nine Chambers, 111, like the triple numbers that people talk about, like tarot readers and stuff. I don't. I've tried even mentioning it to people, but they are not. They're just saying, "Oh, that's cool," but no one's interested in actually like finding the background to this and like what it can actually, how you can use it in a sense, or the knowledge, and like you can check numbers against it, and or it, but like I personally made like a grid, like a mandala of a numbered grid, and put 111, 222, all the way up to 999, and then all the things that I try to like find. All it's not like I find, but I make like databases based on like a word itself or really concepts, and so I'll put like a list of things that I find as I find them there. But it seems to be that it's not again, it's not like I'm looking for just the triple numbers. It's the components that a word or words will come together to create a whole idea, like crystallizing out in the triple numbers. And my skepticism, again, of that is what really led me to pursue it to the degree that I did and have. So, trust me, I get that it sounds crazy and seems retarded, and but it does wonders to memorize things and to like find really to fill in the gaps, I guess, to put it simply. But that these numbers contain the main meat of the secret gnosis, and that I was right. 9 is the master key of the zero, or the egg. 9 and 0, or 90, veils the X, Zodi. And so there's like a lot of controversy about how to like attribute the letters to the Hebrew alphabet, and X is one of the very controversial ones, but 90 as X is really like if you divide the circle by 4, it's 90. So again, this whole like X circle or X in the circle symbolism, which suggests Malkuth, and again, like there's so much I could say about all this, but it's just crazy this connection between 80, 81, and like the 30 or the 31. Uh, Also, technically, X. Hold on. X in Greek is 24 times 24, which is pneuma, and that's big. That's connected to the cryptogram of AL. But then X in Hebrew is 90. So, the X in the O, or the egg, the serpent in the egg, the Lux and the Nox, the Ein Asaph Or. Thus, in deciphering these primary chambers as well as much more, I have found what amounts to a complete revision and update of the Cabala under new Eon Horus Maat balanced lines, as it unveils both the mysteries of the old traditions and hitherto undeciphered formulae of the Eon of Horus, as well as providing a key to the future formulae of that of Maat in her full recension. So again, like 999 is the incoming of the Eon of Maat, which Frater Achad like documented, but then also the Eon of Truth and Justice, which I've documented, and so many more things, like really. But the supreme knowledge, which I didn't realize the depth of that till I again read this. The Trika Shaivism is kind of also a precursor to the Sri Vidya that Kenneth Grant talks about, and he is trying to hint at, I think, with a lot of different things, a sort of higher secret wisdom, which the whole idea of Atlantis confuses, but I think that Brahma and this all these connections to water, and this theory came to me also like from a dream where I had a dream of what was like Guan Yin, but like with Harlequin ichthyosis underwater, crying. Like I thought she was crying, but like it felt like she was in everyone's tears, and yet she's the hearer of cries. And she had Harlequin ichthyosis, or it looked like her skin was like brachiated or whatever, and brachiated. Sorry, I hit the microphone. But there's some water element concept that it's like, which is dimensional symbolism. Again, this whole Twilight language, which the Secret Doctrine Reference Series book about like the Kala Chakra and reference to the Book of Zion. I don't know who the authors are, but it's like a blue book. I actually have it because it's right here. Blavatsky's Secret Books. And I say it's because it's kind of, it doesn't just mention the Kala Chakra. It talks a lot. It has a whole chapter about like Madhyamaka and Sarvastivada, and but it's empty of like even giving a direction to what I want. Like all the books that I just mentioned, which are just again precursors that in and of themselves are, even the Tantra Loka is all like you almost need all these other books. It's not like you need them. You just need kind of a familiarity. But again, like the inner Christian in me is like, well, you don't need any other books than the Bible, um, because there, like, I've had like this rebirth in me of like of an appreciation, which I've never not appreciated Jesus. Um, it's just certain the way it's promulgated or has been, the way people like are just uh, use it as a sort of, what is that, sort of like Pope glass, um, for their conscience mostly. To me, the whole thing is retarded. But Jesus himself, like, I had a mushroom experience that basically I felt like I understood the meaning of the hanged. Like I saw it from the perspective of the hanged man, and I understood what it meant to be the hanged man in a sense. But not just with that thing at work or anything, but like at my friend's house actually, and I felt like I was in a sort of like in the tower of the tarot. Um, but that tower is like a dimensional vortex of your own creation in a sense, and it's reactive to your own decisions. And his like bedroom door to me was like the elevator, and I was like able to go up and down. And in this elevator, though, it was like every door opened to another realm of hell, kind of like Silent Hill, I guess. But like I say another realm of hell, but it was like a different hell I could choose. And I was like, well, how do I get out of this hell realm? And again, all like even though it was under with the help of mushrooms at the time, it made it all so like real in my mind in a sense, even though I was just sitting in a chair. Apparently, my friend said I was narrating everything out loud. Uh, but I remember even seeing like an index of like in this elevator, so to speak, an index of shells and life and what is it like fossils, I guess. And the higher you like, I went up, and I remember seeing like it went into wood, which I ended up talking about in this thing that I stopped reading. But which I'm gonna get back to, trust me, because this tower thing is very. It's kind of like what I keep. It's like a good reference. My ADHD is like a tower because it's like part of the whole common like a common theme in trips for me has is which I think is very common actually, not just in trips, but I think to the amnesia of mankind in general, especially with the whole 666 thing and this sort of like loop that keeps causes us basically to lose focus, and like not just me, but like how do I say this, like the constant barrage of news and all this other bullshit. Like there's it's easy to wash away any sort of ant trail scent or whatever that we would have for even for our own good, for our own good. And so I found this sort of light in me essentially, like in this elevator, and because the top of it, I realized like it's hard to explain because it sounds so crazy, but it was visual, like mental hallucinations. Is what I will even say. I know it was, but it was like based on all the stuff I had read, which was like all the DMT trips I've had, which is anything that you've really kind of like subconsciously implanted in yourself gets it's not just exposed, but like everything's laid bare down to that. This sort of like veil is pulled, and you see um, sort of like content that I can only liken to, again, Tibetan Buddhism, which is really like I've been drawn to because 777 is a code for that, but then so like another spelling of that is 999. So the whole teaching from 777, so to speak, up to 999, and like I keep using these numbers as like as if they mean something, what they do, but it's like it's so stacked, or like what is that, like the interpenetration, but in quantum terms. I forgot it. Like I can't think of every term off the tip of my tongue immediately, but anyway, this whole thing, 999. It's like it's the moon. It's where things come to crystallize, but it's also like that's what time is. And there's this sort of loop. First of all, another better like aspect of that trip was, despite being in hell, I keep trailing off, but again, it led up to this light source, and that light source was invisibly somehow I knew was the true hanged man. Like it was like he was not hanging, but he was like I don't want to say in the sky, but it was like he was just the gateway, the great, like the whole concept of the great filter I found out to be 888. So that's like multivalently symbolic, because the great filter in ufological terms is like our quarantine. Well, the tower or whatever, it's like made of time and the bloodline, and it's in everybody, and it's like the world we are in. It's this because really, again, when you look at the tower on Wikipedia, which is all trusty Wikipedia, it says the phrase "the Tower of Babel" does not appear in the Bible. It is always the city and the tower, or just the city, but it does mention Migdal, and Migdal Babal is the phrase, the Tower of Babel, which MGDLBBL is 111. And so 111, I've mentioned, like I'm not going to go into all the things, but it's like the basis, obviously, of this whole triple number spectrum. But yet, both of them, it's not like this is the past and this is the future. There's like a Tantra Loka nature to it. And so, I'm just gonna keep trying to fucking read through this. Like, thus, in deciphering these primary chambers as well as much more, I found that what amounts to a complete revision. Oh yeah, I read that part. So the Mayat, like all these eons, it's so much to take in. If like even if like for me, it was like I I kept a straight face through a lot of it, and I was just like, what the fuck is any of this mean? Until like it slowly, to me, the eon of Isis, Osiris, Horus, and Maat, which really that's like I like the seven eon thing Kenneth Grant gives in Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, even though that technically I also like the Hindu one more because that's the most complex one and it seems the most accurate, even if it's not accurate. It's just like at least they tried. But there is, I think, some accuracy when you consider their theories and then you apply it to like what the actual mathematical ratios of the planets are. They're like it's worth looking into. It's not like I think there are and therefore blah blah blah. I just think that with the existing amount of overlap, there's we constantly need to like revise. That's why I keep my books, or I try to, because it's like as soon as I've learned something, I want to go back because it's like more significant. It's not with every book, not with everything everyone says, but knowledge itself. I received among many messages the directions to found an order being leveled at 666, universal value of communion, the solar force midway between God and the solar or the pure soul, and self-incarnate existence, Kether and Malkuth. All any order, church, or guru is meant to do is provide a link for these two to recognize their distinctness and unity. And if it does not do this, it fails as an adequate spiritual service vehicle. They are therefore necessarily only good for a time, place, and particular type of person or set of people. An order is called such because it provides such. The highest heads of the order have become an ipsissimus star and have merged with the astral starry fluid which we conceive as being beyond, at least our space-time. This true secret chiefs, like the true secret wisdom, is actually not very secret or hidden at all. It is just forgotten like a dream is forgotten, or like the place before birth is forgotten. So instantly I think of the Kamikala Vilasa and this whole added knowledge of Malini and the Malini Vijayotara Tantra and the like ability for I guess the alphabet to reconstitute all like infinite possibility, but with definition in all three worlds, not just the body, speech, and mind, but which those parallel the Jagrat, Svapna, and Sushupti, and then the all pervading Turiya, which again then formulates in Turiya Tita. And that Turiya Tita, which is like a Bindu itself, is this sort of like new Isis that Kenneth Grant talks about, which is a sort of like um, ipsissimus, or not just ipsissimus, but this transplutonic new Isis or wisdom from outside, which comes about through Kalas, which is why he associates like UFOs with spectrum or spectral energies of the Kundalini. Um, which I tend to agree with because when reading his books, like I would see little sparks of some weird thing I'd never really seen, other than again when I would like press my eyes and go in and see that sort of weird spark that's like a substance that has. I'm like, where is that coming from, and what is it composed of, and like, but it's almost like, like some astral realm or like the ridge or fabric between them. Which again, Kamikala Vilasa being 222, that was another thing that simultaneously with 888 and 777, 888, and 999, like getting deeper and more definition coming into them with my knowledge of what it symbolizes with all this. 222 at the time, like when I started translating the Tantra Loka, like the Italian word that he uses for Shakti essentially is potenza, which is like potency or power, and that's 222. But then the Shiva Samhita is 222. Breathe is 222, or breath, I mean. I'm trying to think. Fabric. Basically, there's this interplay, and it's like the 111 doubled, obviously. But it's more than that, because it has to do with acoustics, and really this sort of science, not just science, but this sort of like the fundamental force or basis of Svota and Devani, and this sort of idea of like the twilight language or this impetus, but which Maurice Bloomfield has this short little thing, but I think that it's important, and it's called on the probability of a phonetic law, and it's from like the 1800s, and I just think that there hasn't been enough serious effort put into this whole bit like taking serious the idea of bioinformatics, really, but not just bioinformatics, but computer what is it like it's there's different words for the different applications of the same thing, but decoding things and filling in gaps essentially. Obviously, to keep in mind also though, the Sri Vidya and like the knowledge beyond is not going to be within those frameworks, but that those frameworks can lead to new avenues that otherwise wouldn't even be considered. Because ultimately, I think there could be infinite avenues, so to speak, to put it simply. So this remembering the past thing also, the fact to remember the past is sits at six. Again, it's like a Dharani. There's like simple things like that I've found, but then they can get pretty like complex statements that elaborate on those simple things. So something tells me to go back to this. Just seeing that dragon and the tower, like Liberturis Veldamus Dei. Like that is in particular is the whole dragon symbolism and Spyro. It makes me think of Camelot again, and this sort of idea of the Twilight, not the Twilight Zone, not just the Twilight language, but if you read these Buddhist sutras and stuff, especially the Avatamsaka Sutra, but the Lotus Sutra too, these worlds are like Buddha lands, um, Pure Lands, and whatnot, are very interesting to me because it's like the dream state. It's very because I've had dreams that are almost like real places, but I can't find them on a map, and I can go like I've went back to them. I can't necessarily control that, but I'm interested in all this. Especially again, reading up another book is the Kanda Maharoshana Tantra, which also like after stopping and taking a break from the not just taking a break, but really taking a rest from the Tantra Loka, uh, finding that they had the Kanda Maharoshana fully translated. I wrote that out because it was also like very important in terms of I don't think I would have really grasped it the way I did and took it as serious because it's very almost hard to take serious um, if I hadn't read the Tantra Loka and experienced changes from not just taking baths, but again, just taking things more serious and like following a sort of trail similar to how I discovered to like kind of just follow the trail in the books and in terms and like mathematically see that you can really like there's a sort of like a dynamic sandbox puzzle nature to um, all of this. It's so crazy that especially going again like in the dark aspect, the whole tower is like it's like very Philip K. Dickian, which I've also mentioned before a lot, and I just didn't expect it. What's crazy is that part of the whole me like skeptically testing it was like, can I get out of this hell that that I was in, like of seeing like 666 and negative aspects, despite knowing like that it didn't have to be like that way, and that's the only way I can just try to summarize it. But again, like some evil fucking shit in an evil world. I was like, how can I raise this to like the 888? Like, I don't even need to get to 999. I'm just using that as a metaphor, but it's like, why can't some light shine in here and like raise the vibration? And it did slowly. Like, I don't know how long. Like, I don't know how long it's gonna last. I mean, I know it's not gonna be forever, but something tells me I had to sit and like again wait, not just wait. I was just sitting and waiting for the right time, and no, I don't know. I just there's no simple way to do this other than just so okay. I'm gonna try to go through this. I was just naming off these books and trying to put this in order. So, talking about Raniero Ganoli's Italian version of Abhinavagupta's Tantra Loka in 2023, which I finished both handwriting and typing in about a year during my time at work. During this time, rereading the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, after also transcribing Abhinavagupta's Paramarthasara, which I mentioned, when going to Arizona for a week during my Grandma Martha's funeral in Kingman, and in Mesa at my mom's with my sister. Tumultuous strain from months of extensive just workplace sort of like putting up with all sorts of stuff and also even with my social life like of which everyone's been in sort of a tower but it's funny because Isham and like Mastermind and Nodis as like I re-listened to all them and then Isham his newest album had like a tower on it or the Tower of Babel and I just found that funny. Oh, and the House of Frankenstein's Powerhouse is like a tower as well, and not that it matters. It's just I had a sort of very towery time. Uh, so basically, I was like, oh, and working nights and stuff, I just didn't avail myself to sleep like I should have. It was hard to. It was just hard to want to sleep. Uh, and yeah, like I don't know, it doesn't matter. But I had incurred an experience of a seemingly timeless, lengthy, although in reality a few hours, casino gulag type of tower card Hotel California Tower of Terror Twilight Zone trip, which peaked when I witnessed the glory of Jesus Christ as the hanged man card being the sacrifice. But it was like it was like he was not there, so everyone had to be sacrificed. And so that's why everything was like a hell world. And it was like in every realm, everyone's dead in a sense, but it's hard to explain. But it was like I just remember seeing like wooden tower, like wooden stalks, and it was like that was the tree of life. The tree of life, like all we had reached with the tower was like all the different ways we could kill people, or like not we. It sounds bad, but it's like humans, and that's how I perceived it. Like there was a fear, like, but I kind of was just like going with it and like and letting it have. I couldn't control it. You know, you just have to go with it when you're uh, like under the influence. But it was like crazy because I I've taken mushrooms before. I knew like what to expect, but the content that I witnessed was just like I didn't even grasp it at the time, but it's not that I necessarily do now, but I did have another dream that I'll end up mentioning where a Bible verse came up that I think it tripped me out because of the fact I wasn't familiar with it, but yet I learned of it through a dream. So anyway, so the hanged man, which it's like, but basically, so yeah, like every person is the hanged man or like is the sacrifice. I don't know. I felt like the fear that you would feel if you were like in a cage, like an animal, knowing you're going to be eaten or something. Um, so being the sacrifice of each body, so like every body was the sacrifice, while Jesus was somehow mysteriously absent or invisible, a glowing radiance like a halo emitted from what seemed to be a giant, almost endless city of wooden gallows with bloody and rotten corpses spanning many eons down and up through a towering layered index of terror. The elevator door to which was the bedroom door of my friend's bedroom at the time, who I found myself perceiving as a sort of tower concierge, aiming to keep me calm and stuck in the clutches of this dimensional monster shaped as any desirable thing. And that's how I saw like everything was like a trap and Chinese finger trap of life. I knew I had to stab this thing in the eye at its weakest moment, which was my own support. For it, and I felt instantly like I realized where the body of Jesus went. I had to get out and go home, during which time, still quite in Camelot, so to speak, a song manifested, grow, in my mind, about how everything seems to grow through concrete, in chaos, on the road, up, down, around. All we need to do is grow out, grow in, grow up. When will I grow up? When will you grow up? They say. They used to say. But those doors closed. I'm not sure of the exact date, but later I dreamed of a lady, either a nurse or a receptionist, in the waiting room of a hospital of some sort, who made some mention of a Bible verse, quote, about the flesh of the body and the flesh being armor or the armor of God. And then the exact and full quote was mentioned on the waiting room television advertisement or programming. I woke up remembering this and the numbers 52 and 53 and the letter C. And what's crazy is like I've sat there and I'm like, where was I? Like it felt like I was like at a hospital and didn't want to, like, you know, like, because either something happened or something was happening that was I was unaware of, like, the nature of, and she was kind of saying, "Oh, it'll be fine." Like, but at the same time, like, the TV thing, which I need to just stop interrupting, but it was like she want my presence of seeing this thing paralleled on the TV was like she was like, "Oh, see, there's proof," or something like that, like that there was proof of synchronicity and therefore God. But it's like that thing could have repeated in my dream, you know, in the lobby of my dream for her to know it was going to be said. But my the stunning feeling of like that caused me to be aware and wake up. And so I said, I Googled this, like 52, 53c in the Bible. I Googled this and found Corinthians, which contains the doctrine of resurrection, and instantly tried thinking of how this could be. Not being familiar with the specific verse or so definite a sign could come through a dream when they had been rather few or far between. Yeah, like a time when I can't remember my dreams like very often, and when I do, it's like profound, easy to remember things, but nothing like that. Like, it seems to me as though a voice spoke through many layers, which in the dream, a pertinent factor was the impression the nurse seemed shocked by the synchronicity in the dream, and felt as though my witnessing it somehow meant a lot to her, and I was wanting to convey something to her, causing me to essentially wake up bewildered and amazed, as if awoken by a blast of a trumpet, in the twinkle or blink of an eye. Death, which I've, you know, like really contemplated, especially since I've another dream I had when I think of death is this black serpent that caused me to learn about Takshaka and want to learn about Hinduism. But then also the word mrityu, which is death, is 666. And to me, that like the knowledge of 666 is the parallel of all of that, like the conquering of death, the wages of sin, etc. So, in waking up may somehow relate to both. So, waking up, oh wait, sorry, I cut myself off. Death, mrityu, 666, and waking up may somehow relate to both the Christian doctrine of resurrection and the regeneration, which I came to find is 999, cults of Asia, the regeneration cults of Asia, wherein the conquering of death is celebrated in so many fashions. Um, the awakened also, like the Sadaka is 111, the candidate, so like starting out, the Aleph or the fool comes back to 111, which is the awakened, which is the Godhead. So because of Luce de Tantra, or being in Italian, the Tantra Loca, in Italian's 111, and the original tarot was termed in Italian, I was then studying the Tryon Fee and Tarot Key, which those particular words happen to be 666. And I created like a little document of tarot readings I was doing at the time to try to like guide or seek guidance about some of this stuff. And I called that whole thing Project Tarot. But in many of its keys, yeah, the tarot keys, and started navigating with tarot during different ordeals and lunar periods leading up to the 13th year mark of April 2nd, 2011, when I obtained the obsidian egg uh, on that day, causing an accumulation of synchronistic revelations and initiations and ordeals with the help of my blog writing and rereading, in the eclipse of April 8th, the 120th year since the receipt of Liber Alva Legis, the second of a dual total solar eclipse that formed the X or an X over the US, with the other date having been August 21st, 2017, which was my birthday, as I've mentioned. So all this stuff, like, again, it's hard not to cut myself off. What's the point in reading it? Well, it's just like, I'm just trying to really, I don't know. You'd have to see it all written down to really see it. What I'm even trying to say, and plus, I shouldn't even talk about what I'm trying to say until I get done talking about it. But oh well, that's just how it is, and that's how it was for me. And that's like there's no way to talk about all of this without questioning it and just being like, also, like, I don't know. Sorry. So, in which at the time I was working doing concrete pumping, making good money. The specific book in 2017. Again, it was like nothing was really. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I did like sense like I was like, huh. I know that what I'm doing now is kind of important for the future. I started getting that sense, and that's why it's crazy to sometimes I'm like, I've been doing all this stuff for so long. Well, what's the point? But it's like things have actually really come full circle. And when I cut myself off of when I was going to say it's not all dark in the tower, but the whole concept of the dragon, which another thing with the same friend, we went and saw Trivium, like Dead Men and Dragons tour, November 6th, 2022, and at the time I also got Black Mass by Thomas Carlson. And so this whole, which again is 222, this whole like dragon motif that I had mentioned with, Saint George, Michael to me and Manjushri are very similar. Like they were both symbolic of like, I mean, not only conquering death or the dragon and Satan, but they both hold a sword, and that's enough. No, I'm just kidding. Like there's so many different things. Um, but anyway, I obtained the specific book I obtained at the period that stands out. Yeah, all I can remember from 2017 is The Secret Rituals of the OTO, which at that time, that's when I was like serious in a sense. It's like about all this. Like I was like, okay, something has to be done to like further document all of this, and that's why I took the video thing. Like, I took my blog serious enough to want to make videos to reread it because I was like, there's something that has to be said for this. Like, I don't. It's not about me. It's about this knowledge, and it has to be preserved. Um, Same with this post. It's like, despite all of my own skepticism and all any sort of like shit that's gotten in the way, it has like stood through and stood like spoke for itself. Like, and so I have to do it some sort of justice by trying to. I say trying because like I feel like some better justice could and should be done to this, and maybe it will in like a book or something. I do need to just get through this because it's accumulating so much knowledge that, again, like I'm losing sight of the beginning of how this all started. That's why all these dates, which seem like I'm like, what am I referencing all these dates? But it's like this thread has, it's like a seed has slowly grown, and it seeded my expectations and even my ability to like, like I don't know, just to contain it. So by some weird miracle though, it's revealed this ability for me to try to do so. So anyway, and yeah, like I just see the OTO as such like falling short. But it helps. Like again, the 666, it's a gradual process that it's like the dirt that is needed for that seed. Again, the seed is 333. But it's when I was also nearing the end of this. Oh yeah, this first journal, in which I put on the cover like this sulfur symbol. I was going to say the symbol for sulfur, and wanted to really like I wanted a complete understanding of 666. And at the time, like the PIN number to my debit card, which you don't choose, it came as 666. So when I stretched that off, I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? That was before all the crazy cars started like harassing me, causing me to realize that there's definitely something behind the force that randomly programs people's licenses to be 666. It just happens to know that they are bad drivers, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, that launched a cascade of change to unleash never fully, finishing the book. So when I wrote that, I never really finished it because things just got out of control with all the things that it did. Like like it was like fire, literally. The complexities of Tantra Loka and Trika Kaula are aided greatly. So the complexities of Tantra Loka and the Trika Kaula like tradition and knowledge are greatly aided by their natural essential constituents, the Vani and Vak, like their actual words, and that's what a lot of the content in the books dealing with like the Spanda Karikas is. But Andre Padu, this guy, I'm glad I found his books because just when I think like, oh, well, there's no perfect books that explain everything in all the nooks and crannies that like you yourself end up having to go through in a sense. But then I find this, which is Andre Padu explains Vok essentially, Velvet Acid Christ, like all of their stuff. Um, no, but I can't help but think of them. Where's the other Andre Padu book? Oh yeah, it's because Teyun Gudrian, who wrote Maya, Divine and Human, which is also very important and deep and good, wrote or edited this book, which is also important for understanding the Malini Vijayotara Tantra and the Kubjika, which I've only passingly mentioned, but it's like you have to even grasp Kubjika and understand her like immensity and her amazingness, and that it's not even just a her. Like Kubjika, which is 69, makes me think of Baphomet, which most people just think of it transgenders at this point. But I mean, no offense to my friend, my friend who's a transgender, uh, but like that's I'm sorry. I also want to talk about rainbows, but you know that's been ruined too. But anyway, the all this stuff, this book, I can't do it justice. But the Kubjika Upanishad, whatever, is so also like in and of itself is like aside from all these books, I'd be happy with that on an island, on the island. No, I'm just kidding. But so yeah, let's go back over to this real quick. The Ordo Draconis, also called the Order of Lapsid Axilis, i.e., the Fallen Star Stone, equates to the high value of 999, the number of the Dragon King, Therion, with none final. Another form of the dragon is Lam, like especially with when you connect it to the Muladhara, etc. The crowned egg-headed entity Crowley drew from life in 1918, the number of the portrait of Lam itself, which next year will be 107 years. After reading The Gnostics and Their Remains by Charles William King, I'm almost certain a link between Lam, whose name is also the root chakra mantra, and the lion-headed serpent Chinubis, and much other related iconography analyzed in that book. Yeah, and like Abraxas itself, which I named my cat, and like I happened to, something told me to look for a white cat on Craigslist like that day, which was my birthday, and I did, and there was one, and he was like a definitely a familiar, which I also got a dog when I was 8 that came out of nowhere, a black dog, part like lab, part Rottweiler, and he was also like a familiar. And something about my birthday, but that's why I named him Abraxas too. Like I didn't even really know much about it, but I knew that Abraxas was a like a not just a charm like people know. Oh, and it's in Charmed, which salute to Shannon Doherty. She was badass. But Abraxas, like whenever I was exercising, I'd think of Abraxas, and it gave me energy. But anyway, uh, and now my cat gives me like motivation. So this relates to lamb to the androgynous Baphomet. Hey, I just mentioned Baphomet. And the crown of heart shapes, along with the shape of the body and the darkened hole at the center, is reminiscent of the Australian Wangina. And now, like the Anahata chakra, to me. Like to fully grasp that and like appreciate it has coincided with, again, all of this. It's all about the heart chakra, like the Tantra Loka, to really grasp it, especially the Paratrashika Vivarana. And again, like the the petals or the dalas of the padmas of the chakras are each letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. Um, and so I think that kind of holds it in place. Like people, that makes the whole concept of Malini, which is where it's hard to explain what the depth of that has to do with, but it's like again reconstituting, mixing up the alphabet, and it's hard enough to learn the Sanskrit alphabet, let alone to confuse it to that degree. But there's something to be said, I think, for it, and I just need to move on because it's too complicated. Go read those books, though. There's something important. And what books? Uh, all of them, but mostly this book in particular. And it's hard. It's hard. It's so much information from different people that it's like hard to like enter. Just like Matrix of Mystery by Herbert Gunther. It's like super. I don't want to say convoluted because it sounds disrespectful, and I respect it, and I respect him. But like this book's worth it, but it's like a labyrinth. If you like labyrinths, read it. Um, but if you like like there is a simplistic route, and like I would say read the Vijnana by Rava Tantra, because that is what really made it like the biggest breakthrough to me through all of this sort of like complexity. I guess it caused me to see things from like with clear eyes, uh, and I didn't even need to hear the guy's commercial. But where was I? Where was I? I was reading two things at once. It's the best way to do it. So yeah, in the heart as being in. So see visions of the past. So it makes me think of this other book, and I cut myself off, but that's what I do. Cut it off. Baphomet. Just kidding. Um, Trust me, it's all there. It's all important. What was it? Did I even have it pulled up? It's Visions. I can't think of the title. Vision of the Vedic Seers, I believe. Maybe I don't have it pulled up, but Jan Gonda, he's like, to me, I think of him as like the Edward Kahns, but instead of Buddhism, of like Hinduism. Um, he has a book called Vision of the Vedic Seers or Vedic Poets, but it has everything to do with like darshana and seeing, and heart vision is 666. It's like all about seeing with the heart, and it's not like a manual. It's more like research based, but can't find it because there's too many things pulled up. But that's an important thing that visions of the past, transmissions from the future makes me think of. Thus relating Lamb to the dream time, 333, or astral plane. The word astral connotes the stars. The serpentine or ophidian form of Canubis, as well as the oval form of the many Abraxas gems, indicates the Kundalini and the auric egg as well. Abraxas plus Lamb is 666. Also showing yet another connection. The dragon is associated with fear and monstrousness, as is the experience of Kundalini. Or, what is that? The Vishvarupa? As it implies a breaking of or transcending of boundaries. The dragon is associated with the number 0, as well as 10, though, as it is the diamond eye, like at least in some versions of Liber 777. It's given as like the eye of the dragon or the dragon, and it's like the Ouroboros, not resurrected, but transcended, which sees beyond space and just Vajrayana in general, space time like a wormhole, and is the Ouroboros which awakens to new realities. Thus, Zero and the dragon are particularly associated with the ordeal of death, the great initiation. 107, Bitsa, the egg, and Ananda, and Parashtrashika Vivarana. Another one of the main things that I found like as a driving force to try to understand it more was the formula of Hamsa being given as like the sort of thing that Frater Chad says about Allah, which is like the breathing in, breathing out. And they say that about Hamsa, and Hamsa again is 107. It's the swan, but it's also the egg. So the egg and the swan is like the chicken and the egg. There's definitely a sort of like riddle there. I mean, as this whole blog is basically devoted to. But lamb is, 107 is lamb the way. But it is also the number of the year in which I happened to buy an obsidian egg on April 2nd, 2011. Since 1904, when the Aeon of Horus began with the reception of Liber AL Vel Legis, the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley. His magical son discovered various keys to this text, mainly the primary key of 31 or AL, which was the reverse of his own magical number 13. Again, that's what age I was on 666, June 6, 2006, when my friend Katina, shout out to Katina, who I haven't talked to in over a decade, she took me to get Abraxas. Her dad won tickets to the hymn concert, so it was like destined. And we were on top of a mountain whenever he called her. The mountain next to my mom's house. But anyway, I was 13 and now I'm 31, so I'm just saying. I was not aware of the significance of any of this until noticing that my own initiations were paralleling those which Crowley and Achad went through when I met a certain Soror 722 in 2012. And I don't know if she knew or even knows this, but 722 is the number of like figures in the Kala Chakra mandala, which is again crazy because especially like I wouldn't doubt that she didn't know that because of the fact that I didn't know that even, and it took me like many different readings to even notice it, and like not just the book but just about it and stuff. So 3 months after starting this blog, on September 9th, 2012, when I started it June 9th, I was not even it was not even until 2015 that I realized that also never actually that I wait. It was not until 2015 that I realized that Lamb the Way had the value of 107 to make that connection. But I had intuited the connection, as I'm sure Kenneth Grant did, who never actually specified this particularly significant correspondence, though he did come close. See footnote 6 of page 203 of Outer Gateways. 107 is gold, or the gold, Bixa egg, which is central to the Amalantra working of 1918, of which both Achad and Crowley were a part. So, again, about to be 107 years. 30 years later, 30 is the egg, or 19 plus 11 with a teth, was 1948, when Achad discovered the formula of Ma ion. Also, 107 is Magen David, which is the Star of David, and 1948 was when Israel was founded. I mean, what is it when a company is like, no, I'm just kidding, that's mean. But, sorry, YouTube. Hopefully that's not like, they probably wouldn't even understand that that's just, not only a joke, but that's not even like funny. And, there's no joke, I'm just saying, it's like, isn't it a company, or the U.S. was created as a company in 1948. I get it confused. So when Achad discovered the formula of Ma'ayan, the ends of manifestation which are relevant to the first and last verses of Nuit's chapter in Liber AL. 107 is the key of AL 76, or 31 plus 76, the cryptogram which upon reading, even by the uninitiated, triggers a cracking of the auric egg. 107, which Kenneth Grant also says like veils the space gates, or the key to unlocking the space gates, is also the Star of David, or Magen David, the shield of the hexagram macrocosm, and therefore the auric shell. And so again, the six, so this sort of lower mandala, we'll just say, the mandala of the mind, or maybe the body, I don't know, psychosomatic, that connection. When there's, higher realms that are forbidden, the forbidden, or no, it's like the forbidden work and the violation. Those are just codes. But anyway, the original aim of this blog was to document this experience. And the more I do, the more it continues to expand and deepen. I obtained the egg without haggling, and it has expanded to become both the kingdom and the crown. The good thing about alchemical gold versus the physical kind is that you can have a lot more without it weighing you down. This is the metal with which to forge the sword. Posted at 3:33 a.m. And so I just wanted to like kind of finish that, but yeah, so like I definitely sensed that I needed to like prod forward, like I needed to stab forward. I needed to cut my way through like a Muslim in the UK. Had to hack through with a machete. Just kidding. Hopefully that's not too soon, and hopefully YouTube doesn't censor me, and hopefully the AI can't, grasp. I would say humor, but it's just sarcasm. It's not like I'm. Anyway. Well, until things change, I guess we'll just have to hunt for offenses on YouTube and not mass murder and ethnic cleansing. So yeah, the complexities of the Tantra Loka Trika and all that whole subject are greatly aided by their natural essential constituents, being highly amenable to gematria and Kabbalistic analysis of the literal or simple application. This practicality aids in the navigation as well as mnemonics of these interconnecting masses of ritual and philosophy. To further astonish as well as compound to illustrate the matter is the applicability of the subtle formulae of philosophical and mystical terms, which can equate or functionally parallel mechanical, physical, and technologically standard formulas, such as in the case of optics. And so, like, again, like, Optics by Isaac Newton, where is it? Right here. I've probably mentioned it, but I knew I needed to spend time and like study this. Sorry, it's OP, Ayin, Pei, Tau, Yod, Cheth, Kaf, Shin. It's even with the Shin. So optics is 888. And like the way he spells colors, Colours, colors is the same number of Sephiroth, the spheres. And like the middle pillar is 463, which is the middle pillar of Tau, Samek, and Gimel, which while 333, like I don't know even necessarily the significance of this, but when you consider Tau without the Samek and minus the Gimel, there's 333. So like a hidden connection between Tau and Gimel, or Samek, so to speak, itself is like it veils 333, which is, I see it as Chosek or darkness, and Samek is temperance, and like I see it as the rainbow, which I'll get into that. And I wasn't joking when I said I wanted to talk about rainbows and that they have basically been shit on. And so now it's going to be like hard for the rainbow to be taken more serious, but oh well, nature's just going to have to be shit on. So optics, so I was like stuck on this whole concept of the laser being 555 and then Hashemir being 555. Usually it's just said called Shamir, but Ha-Shamir as the Shamir is 555. And the whole Ancient Secret book by Flavia Anderson, because it's all about like not just crystal balls, but the whole idea of like lenses, the rays, and that's what led me to optics. And again, this higher wisdom of 888 optics seems to symbolize like this interaction between space and time and like color, and like I keep saying and like it's very hard to explain it. I just, when you have a gematria database of literally all these different things, and they kind of, when you organize them according to not just the triple numbers, but like an entire database, and then you see how it's like things were made to be flush in those numbers, but then also interact with every other possible logical thing. Uh, it's just crazy how what I'm even saying is so verboten, because it's not an accepted thing that, first of all, you can cross apply all these different things, let alone that there's any sort of meaning. But the prism and optics, like optics in its lower value of just 257 without the tau and the shin, just which actually veils the whole formula of the 107 of the egg and the nest that Kenneth Grant and Frater Chod like talked about. The egg and the nest, again, having to deal with manifestation. Manifestation has a certain spelling. Normally it's 321, like manifestation. But I believe it's like with, when you take the O and you give a Vav, like how manifestation would be with Ma Ion as 107, that's how you would have essentially the same number, because it's 257. But anyway, 257 is optics. Well, when you take 666 minus optics, you get that, which is the prism. And the timing of, again, 80 to 81, 409, which is the 80th prime. There's some definite connection, and it's difficult to explain, but like it's only almost understandable or explainable through like a Twilight language approach of looking at what 666 represents in Trika Shaivism, and then applying all of that sort of like the Vak. There's like a whole thing called the Vakyapada by Bhartrahari, but it's like impossible to access. But and then I've also talked about the Ashtadhyayi by Panini, which I haven't gotten yet. So, and all of this is enough to like make me want it though. Ashtadhyayi or Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi. And again, Michael is normally 101, but something tells me when the yod is added to make it 111, that's like Michael with his ray or sword. But anyway, what was I going to say? The prism being the optics prism. Well, like when I think of optics, I instantly think of the prism, because that's where Pink Floyd, like the whole prism of their symbolism comes from to me. And again, like the Twilight language overlap of synchromysticism in a sense. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say it began with Pink Floyd and the Wizard of Oz, but I've explored there's a coding to the Wizard of Oz, and there's a coding to this, and it's the whole triple numbers, like of the white light being 111. Oops, I just typed too fast because, I don't want to. I've gotten too used to being able to type fast, and sometimes I fuck up. But the white light is 111. The whole a science of like one of the best applications of light is the light house, another form of the tower, which is 222. And sign language is 222, which lighthouse is called, the languages of lighthouse is like phairology, but from what I've found is there's definitely like I don't want to go too into it because it's distracting, but there's definitely a coding to light and all these different things, and it's so ridiculously like cartoonishly spot on. The fact that people haven't recognized it leads me to believe that something's very wrong, and it has to do with, again, this distractive like curve of like the word distraction is 666. So once again, so I cut myself off, but I had to bring like this up. That's why it's here. I brought all these things up. Optics was written in 1704, which was, drumroll please, 320, which happens to be the number of Iris, which is the rainbow, also Psyche, and also the bridge, and therefore like the Ahamkara, the Bifrost, and the Rainbow Bridge is the veil of Paroketh, essentially, that veils Malkuth and like separates Malkuth from Yesod, and where they touch, essentially. And Yesod is 80, Yesod, but then 81 is obviously 9 times 9. So it's very lunar, and I had 120 up because it represent the power and glory of the Christ King, which I'll get into the symbolism of 120, but Michael, again, connects to the Temperance card in Samek, because that's who's on the Temperance card. And 120, though, again, like the connection between the 15 and the devil, really the 15th letter was Samek. Somehow they got switched. And yet there's also a switch because in the tower can be 16 or 17. But that one less, that whole like one unit thing, and then also 100, which again, 1 and 100, Atman, which is self, has everything to do with the teachings essentially of Rudra, which is what the Tantra Loka works to, which is like the fractal nature of reality. And that the breaking of the self, like the delusion of the illusion of self and other, which that whole 1 and 0 thing and the dragon and the Ouroboros symbolize, but to actually like do so is, again, this whole Narayana concept, like the Narayana Upanishad is helpful. For me, it was in understanding this whole thing. It says it represents karmic liberation for the whole of the creatures of cosmos, or the community of the initiate, disengaged of the fate of reincarnations. And so the community makes me think of the secret community, Tantra, the Dvaya Samaja, Pei, the form of the lamp, and the 17th arcana of the tarot, the star. And the whole connection between the tarot trump of the tower, which is originally called the House of God, it points to the next series, which is the star, or after the star really, which is the heavens of the sun, or the moon, the sun. And so again, that Samek, and which is the prop, which goes down, and it's connected to the Vajrakilaya, essentially. And there's a book by, I forgot his name, but it's about the rainbow body and resurrection, and I'll like link that. I'm not going to link all these books. I'll put like a blog post with a bibliography at some point, because I want to actually upload, not just upload, but like make an accessible online version of the Tantra Loka with like the codes and stuff. So, because there's a lot. I have an entire stack, not just stacked, but like wide, a very wide booklet of it's about, actually, sorry, the perspective. It's like this. It's a lot. It's a lot of papers, like stacked, of notes and codes. And they're not just nothing. It's the whole point is like the fact that I could just give out a whole bunch of codes. But the thing is there's a process, a developmental, gradual stage that I personally had to go through to even get further. But this 81, I wanted to get to the individual effort 1 in the nirvana world. 80, realizing the act of pure love. The solidarity by excellence, square of 9. I forgot even that the Tao Te Ching is 81 chapters. And so it's like basically this drop. There's like a water droplet concept that comes to mind. The quintessence. Because again, the 17th kala, which comes about through the cycles of the moon, is again that sixth element or the sixth sense that comes from the five tattvas, that the impetus or motivation behind the evolution goes towards. And like I even find this crazy, but the whatever this concept is, the next human is 666. And there's more to that like concept, but it has to do again with the resurrection concept. Or again, there's some darker aspects with transhumanism and all that that I've went into and will come up in other posts, I guess. It's funny because there's like a circle commercial, circling things on your phone, like can now search for them. And again, the circle is like Samek, but also Ayan. And so it can either be the prop, like the tent peg or the Vajra Kilaya, but it can also be the arrow, so shooting up. And there's definitely something to this up and down tower notion, again, and leading to hell, or to heaven, the heavens. So where was I? I was reading this. Oh, I put it down somewhere, and there's like a stack of papers. Oh, it's right over here. All right, so this whole science of optics, like I also say as a quote for like forms of practical or technological applications, is that with COVID, like when that came about, supposedly, I just used it to like really as a time to study this what I summarize as the snake Dharani and the concept of reverse engineering antivenoms and poisons and life extension technology of bioinformatics and computer biology, essentially. Or I forgot the term, but I just haven't looked it up and dealt with all that lately. Another major key in helping me navigate this date is the numbered list of prime numbers, primarily up to about 1009, and their correspondences considered in light of figurate numbers, the ability for numbers to make like yantras or grids or point shapes, and the multiplication tables and factors and the basic relationships. And I quote, or I put in parentheses, 81 being 9 times 9, the 81st prime, 419 being Teth, the serpent, etc. The significance of the primes became prevalent around post 79, the 22nd prime, when I also discovered the Avatamsaka Sutra in Huayan Buddhism, and the multiplication tables and mandalas around post 64. I really got into the whole concept of the architecture of Hindu temples, and then just the ritual, like the depth of the installation procedure of a temple. So during this time, I had read The Sword of Song, Liber 67, and Wan Hyo's Vajra Samadhi Sutra, contemplating the ancient secret in Persephone, which together made 999, and I was like, oh my god, what the fuck. In addition to Tantra Loka and Paramarthasara, which the version I read was this one, if I can find it. No, it's this right here. Essence of the Exact Reality. Sits at 6. But like Tantra Loka 391, it's actually called Shri Tantra Loka. So I transcribed the Tantra. So in addition to the Tantra Loka and the Paramarthasara, I transcribed the Tantra on the Origin of All Rites of Tara, which should be right here. And that book is like a very magical Buddhist text, and I found it after like looking more into the 21 Taras, and there's like a verse or a thing about praise to the 21 Taras or something. Yeah, praise to Tara with the 21 verses of homage. And apparently Ushnisha Vijaya, which was an early thing that, again, caused me to get into all this, was the profundity with which I felt from wanting to learn and copy that and learn Sanskrit. Finding this was like amazing. And the Great Amulet is also very important. So like all of them are important, but the Mahamaya Tantra, the Tantra of Kandamaha Roshana, and I haven't gotten to this yet, but I want to eventually like, I don't want to just read it. I want to like write it. The Tantra of Great Ganapati happens to be sits at 6. I've pulled up all the like triple number ones just to see what they would be, and some of them aren't published. Sutra of Sublime Golden Light is 555. 444 is the Tantra, the Prophecy of the Intent, which I think I Googled that, and what came up was this. And it said something interesting. Maybe it's up here. I don't know, but that's all I could find about it, really. 333 is the Sutra of Vasishtha. 222 is the Sutra on the Chapter of the Great Drum, the Bearer of the Great Drum. And 111, which I think of as the White Lotus, is the White Lotus of Great Compassion. And 81, which I actually want to read this, is Simha's Questions. And 888 was like the Compendium of Dharanis. But anyway, I just was curious. Not that those are random essentially, but it is interesting that what prompted me to look up what the triple numbers were was the fact that Ganesha's was basically sits at 6. There is another Ganesha one that's like I think sits at 7. But so yeah, I just wanted to say that about these texts. Oh, and equal to the sky, wherever that's at. I don't know if I can find it, but maybe it's. Fuck it. Well, equal to the sky is also very deeply important and helpful, and goes into depth with the 3 bodies, as well as the body, speech, and mind being gates, and that also brings to mind this other book, Megacosm, which I'm not going to keep going into too many different things, but like again, there's just so many things that parallel one another. That to fully grasp all this, I think what's forgotten is like the 4 worlds concept and the 3 states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Those are really what activate some of this knowledge, I guess, is like being able to place what goes where, not confusing the planes, I guess. Anyway, so all these texts, and many Dharanis, like these different little Manjushri Dharanis were also very helpful. Just like I feel the need to mention them because it was right after the Tantra Loka that I found all these things, and I wouldn't have grasped them on their own, I think. But anyway, so at the time, right after completing Tantra Loka, I moved positions and knew I wouldn't be able to fully dedicate myself to transcribing the Manjushri Mulakalpa as I wished. These helped expand my newly revealed insight, but have put distance in the freshness in my mind of the many insights of minor value from the Tantra Loka. But so I'll just say, but since I needed to retype some of the first chapters and edit it all, I will have time again to bathe in its purifying stream. Of note is also the divine guidance to my bequeathal of the actual books, of the Malini Vijayotara Tantra and the Kanda Maha Roshana Tantra. Like I bought this lot of books that were mostly Sanskrit texts, and there was a Kanda Maha Roshana, which is only I think the first like 8 chapters. That's all that was available up until like recently. Hey, what are you doing even? Anyway, and the Malini Vijayotara Tantra, which Raniero near it's so hard to say his name. Raniero Ganoli calls it just the Malini Vijaya Tantra for short, but it's called the Malini Vijayotara Tantra. I guess I skipped a page. Of note is also so that book, the Malini Vijayotara Tantra and the Kanda Maha Roshana Tantra, as well as the Kubjika Upanishad. When I think and see that book, I just want to say Upanishad, but it's Upanishad. And I mentioned, but I hate mentioning like prices, and it was pricey, but it's $69. But I think I paid in sections, but I think divided by 4, it was like 17. But 69 is Kubjika. It's also Yab Yum, which Kubjika is essentially like Chakra Samvara in that she's like Baphomet, like a combination, or like she's not sexless, she's like androgen or whatever, because she's multivalent, being like the future self almost. Is the best way I can summarize what she represents. It's like really also the daughter concept of like father, mother, son, daughter, and therefore the future, and outside, not necessarily outside of time, but like in the seed of the future. New ISIS is very much like what she connects with. So the subjects of Malini and Kubjika are best covered by Mark Dixkowski, especially in his translation of the first part of the Manthana Bhairava Tantram, which is 14 volumes, but it's like six chapters. But it's only like the first third, I think, of the whole Manthana Bhairava Tantram, but it's very helpful also. Like it's best saved for like when those other texts that I've mentioned, like the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, Spandakarikas, Shiva Sutras, Pratyabhijna Hridayam. Later I discovered like something called the Boga Karika, which because Boga is also 81, and I had known that, but I didn't really think much of it. And Boga means like sense, sensation, pleasure, enjoyment, indulgence, and like as a realm in a sense. But there's a text called the Boga Karika, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, again, if I made this shit up, it's a lot of work. But no, like, it's all. That's the best way is like to read something and like to be skeptical, but then to find something and be like, what the fuck? Is it like, there's no way I'm playing a joke on myself. Or am I? Like, I don't know. No, but because again, people will say that you can make anything equal anything. I'm simply using the same numbers for like the letters of everything, with the exception, of course, of maybe a few letter interchanges that would allow for one possible, or maybe two, depending if there's like an S and a T, or a C and an S. But again, there's only like one or two variations, not an infinite number or anything you want. Um, but again, even if it was, like, I couldn't conceive of putting all this effort into doing something like that. Like, for me, this is fun because of it being so unexpected, uh, and yet rewarding, I guess. So yeah, like the Manthana Bhairava Tantram is like rewarding. I would say it's like you can go try to read it, but all of the complexities of like the enumerations of things and what the terms are for things, it's best, for me at least, it was best to start with literally like making a lexicon, writing out the Sanskrit, decoding the potentials to see what the best values for that like language is. Like there's a lot more interchanges you could consider, but it's essentially straightforward. Um, and I don't know, like starting from there and working your way up is better than just diving in and expecting to grasp it and then dismissing it all, which I think people do too much with too many things, and then consider it to be like a job well done. It's very weird. But that's 666 for you in this little realm of ours. I'm just kidding. But many of other texts can help to gain entry to this hidden temple. But prerequisites of the above seem necessary for navigation. But the Siddhi, which I'd like give the little number, granted, is well worth the bhakti. The parallelism between Hebrew and Sanskrit as mystically constituting the manifestation of the waking state ceases with the addition of phases. The parallelism between Hebrew and Sanskrit as mystically constituting the manifestation of. See, I don't know. I was just trying to write this all down and get the ideas going to hold like a basic skeleton. Um, Jagrat, waking, Svapna, dream, Sushupti, dreamless, which I've mentioned, and Turiya, beyond, and Turiyatita, whereby Malini, as goddess of the mala, thread, necklace, rope, garland, and again, DNA could could be connected, and Varnas and letters, both Varna or letter as 258, or with the Samek would be 318, has the unlimited Shakti of Akushala, permutation or combinatorics, a sort of link between Kali, the Mahavidyas and Matrikas, and Kubjika. So Kali is like starts manifestation essentially. Again, the mouth, and like via her tongue is suggested. But Kalki also connects to the mouth and is kind of mentioned in this Maya book, which kind of starts right here. Another important manifestation of Vishnu as child is alluded to in the Mahabharata 12:47-38. He who sleeps as a child, having consumed all creatures and made the world or whole world into a flood, being himself the only living being still existent, to him whose self is Maya honor. At the end of the world, which means in the period between the existence of two world eons, Vishnu lives on the waters as a child, and this child contains the whole of existence within himself. This was revealed to the sage Markandeya, who has obtained the boon of perpetuated existence during an immense period of time. The Mahabharata introduces to us Markandeya swimming on the cosmical flood after the final deluge. When he becomes tired and does not find a place to rest, he observes a fig tree raising out of the water, and on one of its branches a child resting, whose face is like that of the full moon. The sage wonders to this may be the the sage wonders who this may be. The child, who is Vishnu, invites Markandeya to enter his mouth and rest inside his body as long as the sage may wish. Then that child suddenly opened his mouth, and I, being no master over myself, Avasha, was caused to enter into it by the act of destiny, Daiva Yogat. Then, having entered his belly without hesitation, O king, I saw the whole earth occupied by kingdoms and cities, and the Ganga and other rivers. All these rivers I saw roaming about in the belly of that exalted one. Then I saw the ocean filled by shoals of sea monsters, the treasury of jewels, the gathering place of waters, and I saw space lighted by the sun and moon, flaming intensely, and its powers of heating, which were equal to fire and sun. And I saw the earth, O king, adorned with nuggets. At that time, the Brahmins were busy sacrificing by means of various kinds of sacrificial offering or ceremonies, and the Kshatriyas were busy pleasing all the other ranks of society. Blah blah blah. The child Vishnu explains his cosmical functions and his identity with the other gods. He sets the wheel of time, Kala Chakra, into motion. He is present in everything but is observed by nobody. All afflictions which were experienced by Markandeya are aimed in the deepest sense of his own. It says hail, but I know that's not what it says. I have to get the book. But anyway, the child manifestation of Vishnu, which may not actually be Kalki, but I know that there are definite connections with the same symbolism of Kalki. Anyway, so Kubjika, the future, latent or daughter eon outside the circles of time, embodying the Kamakala at the root or bindu of the Sri Yantra. Again, which I found and was surprised was Sarva Nanda Maya. Sarva being like all, Ananda bliss, and it's, what is it, the all blissful center is 555. I forgot what it, there's another, it's like explicating what that means, and it's 666. But that's mentioned in the Kamakala Vilasa. And that is the Bindu point. Sarvanandamaya is the point in the center of the Sri Yantra, which is essentially the Turiyatita state. Also, the daughter plus Kubjika is also Shakti away from 666, and Kubjika is essentially the daughter form of Shakti in her fullest flowering, which is unflowered. Many, many Cabbalas have been found, quite scattered, yet highly precise in their spelling and formulation. Hold on. Making the whole notion that an infinity of variations and possibilities in the collective components to account for the reflective self or Atman, magnetized by the lunar 80 effluxions. Effluxions is 333 again, which this is like a very lunar number, and selenology is 333. And also the Rasa Kala. There's so many things too. 333, and it's the Kaula ritual. Yeah, the Kaula ritual. So it has everything to do with cycles, but also like a mandalic, Saturnian. It's like this connection between Saturn and the moon. And so again, when you put them together, it's the sun, which is very much related to both of those as well. And I'm not just trying to overly numerologify everything, because all it does is lead back to the natural matrix, if you want to call it that. But that's kind of the whole point. At the same time, it's just crazy how much consistency there is to what, without again these pointings along signs and pointers along the way. I would just be like, oh, we're just in a simulation of retardation, I guess, for the fuck of it. But I think that there's a generational, there's an opening and there's a potential, but there's also the potential to waste that opportunity. So yeah, effluxions of the Kundalini, and Kundalini is 181, which is twilight, which is twilight is 82 language, and the twilight language and Kundalini. It's like, to me, I see them as very much related because it's like it's that impulse that I attributed to 81, but then with the lunar 100, and really Kaf is 181 with the Hebrew the. Kaf is also Daimonia is 186, and what else? There's a whole thelemic text about 186, and Golgotha. Golgotha is very important. I even have it pulled up because of, again, I mentioned the next human and evolution and all that, and then also just this verse. But where is it? Calvarii locus. Calvarii locus can be 666, and there's a lot of other things, like, where was it? One of the other forms of Golgotha is like this one right here. No, Galgalith. I don't remember, but I found 444, and in and of itself, it's nothing, but it's like, to me, the skull connects to technically the Cabala, the Kashmir tradition of the skull cup, which connects again to the Grail, and the skull of the Templars sits at 6, the crystal cup. There's some symbolic connection, I mean, at least loosely, but this resurrection of all this stuff, the motifs seem to be like related again to this transition of 666, 777, which is a Storos, and the word or not liberation, but because I ended up finding that was a mistake, but there's a bunch of things that symbolize 777 as being liberation, again, Tibetan Buddhism, but there's deeper to that. Manjushri sword, liberation from 666, and then being like a sort of pathway to 888. And the true liberation of the nirvana of 999, which veils again one away from 1,000, the Sahasrara Chakra, even though Sahasrara Chakra is also 999. So, pardon the twilight language, I literally say. This ratio of 1 in 100, Michael, which Michael, when you add it up with the Hebrew to English, is 99. So, 99, which I've mentioned. But it's also alchemy, which is also another reference that the tarot or the Temperance tarot card relates to. And one of the main alchemists that isn't really considered in regards to alchemy. I mean, he is if you're studying it, but most people think of like magic and Enochian magic. Is John Dee, who died at 81 years of age. He wrote this book, where did I have that? I have so much shit pulled up. It's called Prope Dumata. Or, fuck. I don't want to try and look for it, but it's... Well, I'm going to, upload a reading of it, but it's 120 verses, and it has to do with the connection between astrology and astronomy, but to me, it's symbolic of, time, essentially, and considering time and rotation in regards to considering, when you're looking into the stars for measurements, Again, it kind of relates to optics, but it also relates to Tantra Vidya. Um, and so this rainbow connection, this rainbow bridge, I mean, I really don't know. It's perplexing to me. Like, I didn't really think much of it. Also, 15 as Ayin, being the eye, is what perceives the rainbow. And again, like Tantra Loka is all about light, but also Tantra and warping. I believe, I was going to say warp is 287, Tantra is 270, but Tantric is 287. Um, it's those little like linguistic variants of, the spelling like Tantra, Tantric, that is very crazy that all the different like like the grammar of Sanskrit is profound with its geometric sort of like uh, precision. So anyway, let me go back to this. Eventually, I'm getting through what I wanted to talk about. It's just so all over the place that I couldn't imagine it appealingly, you know, be logical enough to be not entertaining, but like I don't know. But I have to just get through this because it's been on my mind. So yeah, Michael 99, Veils 111, because Veils is 111. Many mysteries. Yod. Michael 111 is, or 101 is Yod short of 111. Two more than Michael, who on the Temperance card also represents alchemy 99. So Temperance spelled out as 789, which plus 99. I think it's Temperance with a gimel for C, and 99 makes 888. Jesus and the Philosopher's Stone. Even in Russian, the common Mikhail, with the I, like, because normally in Hebrew, Michael would be 111. So yeah, even the Russian Mikhail emphasizes another I, but seems a symbol of bestowal. So the Yod, yeah, it's bestowal. As with Amma, which is like the unfertilized mother, 42, the degree of the rainbow, and then becoming Ima, which is 52, which is basically Maya. And Laya, which is like Laya Yoga, references Kundalini Yoga, and it means like absorption. And this, again, this angle and the water element, uh, the, the orb or the sphere or the samudra drop, like the drop of water from the ocean of, Brahma. All of this is sort of like, I don't know, it's self-referencing. And Indra as well, so the Indra's net, or the net of jewels. The rainbow, from Myth to Mathematics, the book, contains a whole history of the significance of the development of optics, including a reference that left me intrigued to a book that I had to find online called Thoughts for the Day of Rain by Cotton Mather, who, like of the whole witchcraft or Salem witch trials notoriety. He wrote it in 1712, which to 2024 minus 1712 is 312, which I didn't find that significant. But when you subtract 2024 from 1692, next year will be 333 years since the Salem witch trials. A lot of things seem to point to 2025 as significant, and it's also 45 times 45. 45 is 1 through 9. And that book, though, The Thoughts for the Day of Rain, like I have that pulled up. That's one of the additional things that keeps getting in the way. But it's in two essays, The Gospel of the Rainbow and the Meditations of Piety on the Appearance of the Bright Clouds with the Bow of God upon them, and the Savior with his rainbow, and the covenant which God will remember his people in the cloudy times that are passing over them, i.e. death. Or like, this is what I think. And I was going to write this and give this to my dad, but again, wouldn't appreciate, he would probably just be offended because of the rainbow. But to me, the irony of the fact that Cotton Mather wrote this, and it's such a good text, like there's just this little thing in the beginning. Um, he ends up talking about the flood, which to me like makes me think of the Tower of Babel at the same time, and essentially the same implications. And he gives a lot of like there's little things in it I can't remember, and I'd have to, but I literally wrote this in the form of a book of the same sort of thing I wrote the Sanskrit Lexicon in, and it ended up fitting like perfectly. But it really is like a gospel of the rainbow, and the significance mostly is just the surprising significance he gives of the rainbow and linking it to Jesus and the whole doctrine, not necessarily just of, not of the resurrection, but of the promise of like the hope of heaven essentially and all that stuff. It's like what it's about, but it's considered it from like with all these other things that I've just mentioned. Um, it's that's why I took such an appreciation of it. But I was surprised that it was mentioned in this book talking about the rainbow, and he does quote like what prompted this. Obviously, his writing of this was optics, and it's being published in 1704. Um, but I don't know, just the you have to think about what was going on at the time, and he must have thought that the apocalypse was like right around the corner, which a lot of people still think, but it's not what the doctrine of Jesus is about, which isn't just like that's what makes current Christians so much more like satanic and almost and atheistic at the same time than Satanists and atheists. Not that Satanists and atheists are any necessarily different, like in practice and doctrine necessarily. Not that the doctrine of Christians, it's just they don't go by it. But anyway, I complicate things when I try to simplify them. But this Mathers book is very, very funny. And let's see, okay. So yeah, he's put which goes into the theological relation of Newton's optics in a strangely haunting diatribe about the apocalypse, tying it back to the flood of Genesis, giving a gospel of the rainbow. Many simple but weighty formulae dealing with colors, 444, the optics prism I mentioned. Oh, and degree, like colors are degrees of the white light, but degree is 222 plus colors. And so like the color wheel and the circle of color and the circle of light, like that was a big component, and I connect it to the dragon, like the eye of the dragon and this activation of the dragon energy, so to speak, or um, the Camelot thing I keep referencing. It's like it's weird because this 666 being the circle, activating the circle of the five and the six elements essentially. Um, and Shiva is considered like the 1 through 36 elements, and so with united with Shakti is makes the Chakra Samvara Mandala, which is also like Shiva or not Shiva but Haruka and Vajravarahi united, which creates the interplay of manifestation, and also Shakti manifestation is sits at 6. But anyway, Shiva and Shakti just it happen to be sits at 7. But anyway, simply listening to the words and reading quickly allows links. Simply listing the words quickly allows links to connect and suggest a design, or at least tendency toward cohesions. And cohesions is 333, which are formed with the manifestation process of the moon. I was also reading The Fire Tried Stone, or The Fire Tried Stone by John Trinick, and noted the date of the first correspondence between him and Jung around, or possibly, yeah, I read it, I'm pretty sure on July 13th, the same day Donald Trump had a run in Pennsylvania, which is funny because, like, what's the avenue of the White House? But one of the books it mentions is The Concept of Dread, yeah, in The Fire Tried Stone by Soren Kierkegaard from 1844, which I just am curious. 180. 180. Which is 120 is sin, which I was going to get into because the book of The Concept of Dread, like, talks about hereditary sin, as he calls it, but sins is 180. 180 is also the axis of 90 degrees, again mentioned, relates to the x and 90-degree angle, but 180 happens to be the axis. And again, what was it that had to do with the circle, the eclipse, 180 and 360? I don't remember, but anyway. Either the next day or shortly after, my friend found 3 books, and among them was a book called The Concept of Anxiety, the same book of The Concept of Dread, but reprinted and retitled in 2014. So that was like 10 years ago. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. The Concept of Dread is 529. Oh, and that's not only 23 cubed, but 666 minus 529. The number 23, the number of synchronicity and Jim Carrey craziness. 137 is the Cabala, which Wolfgang Pauli, which was friends with Jung and wrote the synchronicity, like acausal connecting principle book together. He had this whole thing about 137 being his sort of like synchronistic number, and I think he died in room 137. But at the same time, the concept of anxiety, I looked that up, it was 490, which I know this Koth, Kenneth Grant talks about in Drakenberg, and I mentioned that in one of the posts previously, I think, I don't remember, but Drakenberg in Blood, what Tracy Twyman talks about in regards to the Dragon Kingdom. But dread and anxiety, the difference between the two, happens to be 444. So yeah, this book is actually like called A Simple Psychologically Orienting Deliberation on the Dogmatic Issue of Hereditary Sin. And I can't even begin to go into how this all connects, but I do want to say I like his attitude, and that also reminds me that, and I'm not trying to do this, but attitude is 444. But why that's significant, it's hard to explain, but it's like, it makes you think of mandalas in general, but also like flying saucers. Jung wrote about and literally called his book that. But the whole concept of mandalas and flying saucers, which are like cartoonish again, anxiety and sin, basically, like, how do I even say this? There's like some cartoonish element to Malkuth, and obviously, like I've mentioned, Malkuth or is 111, the start and the finish, but Spyro again comes to mind, and the dragon, like those little gates that he takes, the spiral portals, the kingdom portals. The kingdom portals is 666. And what does this all have to do with? Well, it makes me think of just this relationship between, again, Koth, the middle pillar, Samek, and what it represents is the prop or the tent peg, but also the arrow. The whole concept, the symbolism of the tower, but really Kundalini, the like up and down, like Kundalini blasts off, so to speak, or like strikes, and kind of like it's destructive in a sense. The whole concept of destruction is 666 also. And so, but not that it's necessarily destructive, it's just that it's kind of like the whole concept of death or mrityu. It leaves things as empty in a sense, but that's also the true nature of things. Um, so it's like I don't know what I'm even trying to say other than I keep getting distracted, but the whole, those little spiral things in Spyro is what I think of in regards to Samek and the force of the arrow, but also really of the, because it crosses the tower. And it would be kind of more symbolic, I guess, if the tower was going upwards, but the tower is kind of collapsed. And it's the Samek force and that spiral and the resurrection and the temperance that I kind of grasp with the, again, just 120 being, and what this book really says about sin and how history is created because of the whole Adam, like Adam's sin. And Adam, which is in Hebrew 45, 1 through 9, I just mentioned, but Adam spelled out is 46, and 1 through 46 is Tifereth, which is 1081, and Malkuth is 1 through 31, 496, which I had just said is 111, but it's just the anomaly of applying Hebrew to the English that it can be that way, whereas Malkuth in Hebrew is really 496. So I'm just saying there's like little things, and what does all this symbolize? Well, I don't know, other than clearly the tree of life, despite its like random attributions and all these words and all, there's, I don't know, like, I'm not even going to say there's definitely, because of all this, some sort of connection. And it just happens to be that I found this perfect little nook and cranny to find it all, but it's not that. I think that it's just that it is a little bit of creative, like it's not like, oh, I'm making things equal what they want. It's just there's like a creative pulsation, to use the Sponda term, but that's what these are essentially, the Spondas, or the, like there's just, I don't want to use the same word I just said, but there's like creative pulsations, sparks. And that's what I see with the Samek and the analogy of the Spyro Kingdom portals. What else did I say? Oh, I like gave some other little codes. The place of understanding is where it leads to. And what is the place of understanding, which place would be with a Gimel? The place of understanding would be the city of pyramids, which again, the city of pyramids is 777. So I ended up saying also this book, Judah's Scepter and Joseph's Birthright, that I have pulled up. There's a lot to this book, and I really don't, it's not that I don't care, it's just most of it's not what I found significant. But about towards the end, there's a lot to it that is significant, especially if you want to understand what there's the context of the scepter and its significance here is, but also the scepter, or wait, in this case it is with the Cheth. The scepter is 777. Again, sort of liberating or like higher, like 666 is all about like the throne in a sense, or the seat, the sacrum actually, but sacrum itself can be 555, which is very important in the Ancient Secret book. But also there's a book called like the where is it? I wrote it down somewhere. The Mesoamerican Sacrum Bone, like gateway to the underworld. Let me see if I have it. is... I don't know. I just know it's by Brian Strauss, and he talks about this connection between the skull, the spine, and the sacrum. And skull, spine, sacrum, or sacrum with, I guess, a cheth. And those are like, again, the three levels of lower, middle, like, again, like Tau, the middle pillar, it makes me think of Tau, Samek, Gimel. But anyway, this book mentions this cross, and this cross, like the X and the O, I kept mentioning. To those who understand the Cabala and the arithmology of the scriptures, it is known that the number 13 is significant of rebellion. But all that we can say about it here is that the first time this number occurs in the Bible, it is with reference to rebellion. Surely that people whose characteristic number is 13 did rebel in 1776 and prospered in it too. They also prospered in 1814 in another little affair concerning the acquisition of a vast stretch of territory known as Louisiana. So they're talking about the Confederacy battle flag X, which also, I mean, is on the British flag. But anyway, here again is both rebellion and birthright cross of the house of Joseph. In this struggle, the government also prospered, and it was essential that it should thus prosper not only in this case, but also in the others of which we have spoken, in order to fulfill a prophecy concerning one feature of their history, namely, show my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to undo the heavy burdens and let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? These are the reasons for which our race go to war. England freed her slaves in 1838, and America freed hers in 1861. It has often been said that brothers would quarrel, Judah and Ephraim did, and so have Ephraim and Manasseh, and the troubles to which they have thus far alluded have been family affairs. When it comes to these family difficulties, that one will always conquer, which must do so in order to fulfill the word of God. But when it comes to the war with non-Israelitish nations, whether it be to undo heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, to break the yoke of slavery, or for whatever reason, then the Israel of which we speak will always succeed. For it is of literal, fleshly Joseph Israel, of whom also is spiritual Israel, of whom it is said, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. And also the following, the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the sheep, or goats, who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. Thine hand shall be lifted up among thine adversaries, and all thine enemies shall be cut off. It was in the fulfillment of these promises that Napoleon, the hitherto victor, bit the dust at Waterloo. It was in the fulfillment of these promises that the American fleet entered Manila Bay and destroyed the enemy's fleet, blah, blah, blah. It is in the fulfillment of these words of divine truth that the American fleet destroyed the Spanish fleet in Cuban, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I was reading this, and there's a lot to this, and I don't know if I even fully agree with the sentiment of the author. But that X, it comes up somewhere else too. I don't remember where. That's not what I wanted to read. It could have been this. Lion and the Unicorn. I don't remember exactly, but it caused me, after reading that book, like I read not every bit of it, but a lot of it, to really try to understand what it was even saying. I still don't fully, but because I was also reading it with the concept or the context of, again, that vision I had of this like tower, which I took to be kind of like, I don't know, I don't even know what I want to say about it other than that it just caused me to reevaluate all this stuff with more like respect and trying to understand it. But it caused me to see this trumpet, because again, the trumpet is what is mentioned in the Corinthians verse that I dreamed about. And this cross stood out to me, and plus it's verse 20, and tau, which is the cross, is 20 times 20. And 2020 was actually like the middle year between the eclipse that was formed that made the X or whatever. And 2020 was also the year that I felt like I was actually in the middle of this whole blog reading at post 56, and I felt like in my mind some lensing situation thing happened with 2020. I say lensing, but like I don't know, just something to do with like a forward backward vortex of some sort. And where was I reading? Where did I stop? Because I wanted to bring that up. Judah's scepter and Joseph's birthright also shows the significance of the X, which can also be seen as the red cross on the trumpet of the judgment card. 20 times 20 is 400. The center of the X of the dual eclipses. And Amavasya, which is the new moon, is 120, which is 1 through 15. And Grahana is 261, which is the eclipse. What is that together actually? 120 plus 2. So that's spiral actually. Spiral. Anyway, and also Shin added to the 81. 81, when you like minus the Shin and add 300 instead, it's manifestation. But anyway, and during which I felt a sort of pole shift, I say. And pole, I only say that because pole shift can be 666. Of some sort of hourglass of the micro and the macro. As some have suggested, the Mayan calendar date of December 21st, 2012 may have been off kilter by about 5 years. Not that it is to mean anything or one way or another, but the notion presents itself to my mind in attempting to consider the potential significance of all these interlocking cycles of Kala forming Maya, a wheel of wheels within wheels of veils of the white light, beaming from the Godhead as pure love. Which, sometimes not so lovely ways, but I say that because, like, again, just this whole subject, all these subjects, have really, like, caused me to reevaluate how I look at things. It's really, like, again, turned this sort of hellscape into some sort of funnier place, I guess, for me. I'm still just perplexed about it being 320 years since Newton's optics, which is iris. Like, I just find that crazy. Like, I didn't time that. It's just when I got to that book. And another crazy, like, little thing that only would be significant to me, I guess, and now would be the fact that when you add Samek up in full, like Samek in Hebrew is 120, or with Kaf final 600, or wait, Samek, 500 as Kaf final would make it 600, which is like cosmos, the opposite of chaos. But I mean, really it symbolizes the world. And Samek spelled out is 126, which is Padma, Eon, and Lux. Like Padma, the flower, again, of time, Eon of time, and Lux, light, which is basically time. It's like there's some probably proportion between the speed of light. That's like a squaring the circle difference. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm like already tired from explaining all this, but Samek spelled out in full would be Samek as, 120, Aleph, Mem, Hey, and then Kaf, which in and of itself, or wait, Samek, because I forgot the Aleph as 111. I accidentally made it 11, but anyway, Samek has 426 spelled out. Veils when you take the Samek in Samek and exchange it with a Shin, making it whatever you want. no, it's just there's like I just found that and I'm like, what the fuck? There's definitely some connection to 666 and the I say the prop, but Samek. Well, I was like tinkering around and this whole like the prop of Jesus is 666. The prop being again this. If you think of it, it's like the Vajra or the Vajrakilaya or the Furba. Um, what was the other? Oh yeah, and then the Kerygma of Christ. And Kerygma means proclamation or message. Essentially, what he, like his words, the sword from Jesus's mouth. Like I forgot how I had found it, but Jesus, sword, Jesus, words and mouth. So Jesus's mouth and words, or sword and mouth. He said like, from my mouth I bring a sword, like, or he says I bring a sword instead of peace, but he says a sword comes from his mouth, which I think is his words, and how they essentially, I don't want to say cursed, but the whole thing about the family that the Judah Scepter book was talking about is kind of like important. So like to some of the verses in the Bible and the doctrines, and I only found out about this again because of haphazard circumstances guiding me to it. But basically, I do think that like I don't know. I don't want to go so far as to say Jesus is like a just another Hindu, avatar, but he has like all the connections to possibly be like Kalki, even though he's not riding a white horse. But if he comes back on a white horse, he might be Kalki. No, but there's definitely some like connections, obviously, between the basic doctrines and the symbolism and it all leads to like a similar place, which is that really what I think of the relation or like the sort of like wisdom contained in the mystery surrounding what I keep mentioning regarding 666 and 888 and 999 is this. I don't want to bring up yet another book that I can't like fully go into detail about, but there's a book called The Dimensional Structure of Time, and it's like I think it says with a note on drama, and it's like drama and writing a sort of like story and the sort of structure of the comedic timing and the structure of it all is all contained, I guess, in that sort of like the wheel, the samsaric wheel. But yet, there's an element, again, going back to this concept of the Kamakala Vilasa, Sarvanandamaya, and the three states, and kind of vibrating. The whole Malini Vijayotara Tantra thing that I mentioned. There's an ability, so to speak, to dream a new reality or to wake up into a new dream, and that could be what dying consists of. But that dream that I had about the synchronicity of some lady mentioning a Bible verse and then it coming on the TV and then the shock of it kind of waking me up, to me, like I pondered on that and it was profound, and it was like, how can something outside of myself speak so like to such a level, like with such loudness that it affects me and makes me question like my own reality and its comparison to other potential realities. And I don't know, all of this is just like, it's funny because despite telling myself like, oh, I've got a better view of all of this now, enough to be able to talk about it, I really don't. Like, I mean, I do, but I don't. It's more like I have a good enough overview of just how crazy and fucking like complex, seemingly pointless it all is. But yet at the same time, like the more I go, the more I find things that I don't want to say validate, because nothing. I don't want to find conclusions. I don't want to validate. I like being surprised, and I like finding where I was like mistaken. So not just only because I just want to be mistaken, but because it opens up new avenues and um, causes you to find the right direction and stuff. So I don't know. My cat wants me to go to bed, and I could talk about all of this probably more and more. There's more stuff I want to talk about, but I'll probably talk about it, in the next blog posts. I can't just drag this on forever, expecting to like, I don't know, ever find the best time to and the best way to discuss it. Um, it took me like 2 or 3 days just to try to like feel like I had to review all of this. There's a lot, and I did. There was all of this stuff that I've talked about. Again, it's 2 years worth of like slowly finding these texts, reading of different things, and being guided into other ways of for me to just you know go and talk about it all as quick as I did and not do justice to any of the depth of all this. But at the same time, I was like, if I sat there and tried to like read all these texts and make it public and like do the whole thing, a lot of the goal of what I was aiming for would be lost. And but just like reading and just posting the codes is not enough. That's why really all I can really do is like recommend people, or I just wish the world could apply the the idea that like things over a gradual process with like integrated effort, like not just effort, but like an integration of different things without all the, I don't want to say negativity, but it's just like there's such a sentiment of negativity in the world regarding moving forward at all, that's what keeps everything cyclically just fucked. And it's stupid to just be like, oh, well, I just wish the world was better. I realize, but it's like, I was like, maybe I shouldn't even talk about this. What's the point? But then I was like, if any of the people that I've read all this stuff through and because of and like been able, like, if little chains and links in that ladder were not there, I'd probably have given up somewhere along the way, just out of laziness or just being like, what the fuck. But no, if there's anything like linking it all together, it's this. And again, sin is looked at as like bad and evil, and I think Crowley, his whole like sin is restriction. That's not necessarily. I think there's a limitation to that. There's a restriction to that concept that it's hard to explain. Like I started to see it as being like an inversion of what sin is. Obviously, sin is the lack of restriction. But anyway, it's like this book, The Concept of Anxiety by Soren Kierkegaard, and what he ends up saying is very much what I felt like when I was like 15 and started studying philosophy. And I say studying philosophy, but just finding all the ways I could enter into philosophy, even whether it was a dictionary, the internet, Marilyn Manson, is because it was just all like, I don't know, the world needs philosophy, really, a good background in philosophy, and not just like an entry level course when you get to college if you're dumb enough to pay for like such a thing. No offense. I mean, not really. I don't think that in every case. It's just, oh, shit, right? Not everyone can be a like worry about philosophy. I get it, but the that's why like religion won't work, is if you just think one thing's going to work without having the like a skill and being able to, I don't know. I talked about skill and able to think, and yet here I am like super tired from working all day and then coming and doing this, but I'm sitting here talking shit. No, if anything, I'm just saying like I have more optimism, I guess, out of all this, because it just shows me like none of the shit going on in the world matters. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's, like as much as people want it to be, also, it's like waiting. Things are waiting until you and I, like anybody, does the hard work, like whatever the hard work that needs to be done is. So for me, this was the hard work that I needed to do today and to move on to the next post. And so, yeah, sorry.